Good morning, Chairman Jimenez, Ranking Member Tanadar, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to talk about Coast Guard's shipbuilding programs and their challenges. I'm a relative newcomer to DHS and Coast Guard acquisitions. I have spent the majority of my GAO career assessing acquisitions at NASA and DoD, in particular Navy shipbuilding. Given my unique experience, I can say that some of the fundamental challenges and disappointing outcomes I see with Coast Guard acquisitions are not unique. However, I will also say that the Coast Guard and DHS are not doing themselves any favors or the taxpayers any favors when they point to factors outside of their control as the primary cause for these outcomes. Coast Guard should do more to address what it can control. For example, GAO's extensive body of work on DHS and Coast Guard has resulted in 40 recommendations aimed at improving how it manages its acquisitions. As of today, about half of these recommendations remain unaddressed, or we have already closed them because the Coast Guard didn't take action in time for them to make a difference. Given the Coast Guard's ships cost billions to acquire, and they play a vital role in securing our homeland, my statement will focus on what the Coast Guard needs to do to improve outcomes for its existing and future shipbuilding programs. First, I will cover the main challenges that have plagued the Coast Guard's highest priority programs, OPC and PSC, and missed opportunities for improvement. Second, I will discuss leading practices that GAO has recently identified to help provide DHS and Coast Guard with a new path forward for achieving better outcomes in its ship programs. Both the OPC and PSC have struggled with achieving a stable design to support construction. This is a key leading practice to achieve predictable outcomes. For OPC, we found that DHS and Coast Guard allowed the program to repeatedly proceed through design points intended to prevent programs from moving forward when they're not ready. This happened despite significant risks and our recommendations to the contrary. For example, OPC was authorized to start construction on the first 4 ships without fully developing a critical technology or completing key portions of the design. For PSC, we found that the program continues to struggle with design even after 5 years. Several factors that should have been red flags from the start have contributed to this, including a lack of heavy polar icebreaker expertise in the industrial base and the complexity of the design. Additionally, the shipbuilder and Coast Guard underestimated how many design changes they would need to make to meet Coast Guard specifications and made costly design errors, such as designing the lowest deck of the ship at the wrong height. Both programs are not meeting their original cost and schedule goals and are now reevaluating the feasibility of their current estimates. Specifically, the OPC lead ship delivery is delayed almost 4 years and costs have increased by $11 billion. And the PSC lead ship is delayed by about 5 years and costs have increased by at least $2 billion and potentially more, as my CBO colleague will testify. In the meantime, the current fleet is aging and crews are having to work harder to keep existing ships operational while they wait for the new ships. Our work on leading practices for acquisitions, which has spanned decades, presents opportunities for the Coast Guard to improve. For this work, we gathered and vetted practices from successful commercial companies to identify how they deliver innovative products that meet cost and schedule expectations. The bottom line, when thoughtfully applied, the practices leading companies follow for designing and constructing ships improve outcomes, even when cultural and structural differences yield different sets of incentives, priorities, or requirements. At a very high level, companies establish realistic, executable business cases. They use their processes, tools, and expertise to continually reevaluate their business cases to ensure that programs are on track and will take quick action when the business case deteriorates. These practices and the many open recommendations I discussed earlier provide a good starting point for the Coast Guard to consider new approaches to acquiring its capabilities to meet its important missions. It is safe to say no one is happy with the results the Coast Guard is seeing, and change is needed. Chairman Jimenez, Ranking Member Tanadar, and members of the subcommittee, this completes my oral statement. I'd be pleased to respond to any questions, and I also want to take a moment to express my condolences about Mr. Payne.